Welcome to Bunny Trails, a whimsical adventure of idioms and other turns of phrase. I'm Dan Pugh.
And I'm Shauna Harrison. Each week, we take an idiom or other turn of phrase and try to tell the story from its entry into the English language to how it's used today. It starts with something small, a forgotten text, a sideways glance, a tiny mistake, and before long, it's grown into a towering drama that feels impossible to climb over. That's what happens when we make a mountain out of a molehill. According to Oxford English Dictionary, to make a mountain out of a molehill means, quote, to attribute great importance to something, especially a difficulty or grievance which is insignificant in reality, to make a lot of fuss over a minor matter, end quote.
I really like that last line that they used, to make a lot of fuss over a minor matter.
Right.
That, I think, is a really good description of this in a quick and easy way.
Mm-hmm.
You're making a big deal out of something that's not a big deal.
Right, exactly. So we can't pin down an official origin for this phrase, but we can at least look at a brief timeline. The word molehill has been in use since around 1450 in English. According to Oxford English Dictionary, the definition of molehill is, quote, a small mound or occasionally ridge of earth pushed up by a mole in burrowing near the surface of the ground, end quote.
Okay, so like a little, like almost like an anthill, but like it's just a mole, and they dig up, and so there's a little mound, like a really,
Right.
really small mountain, or a mountain for ants.
Sure, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So people spent a bit of time looking at the landscape back in those days, because they didn't have like TVs and stuff.
Yeah, that's why no TVs, so they just stared at landscapes.
Stared at landscapes. Honestly, a lot of people's just day-to-day jobs and necessities of taking care of their homes and their families required them to be outside doing things
Sure.
in the outdoorsy spaces. Oftentimes, people recognize similar things in nature that they exist at various scales, like puddles, lakes, oceans. It's all just a thing of water. A molehill, being compared to a mountain, isn't wild, right?
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone who knows what both things are would likely be able to understand the meaning of the phrase.
Yeah,
so.
This is just an example of scaling, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're making an ocean out of a puddle. Would it doesn't sound as good, but would work.
Right.
Okay.
The earliest reference I was able to find in print for the phrase is from John Fox, martyrologist, in his 1570 work, the first volume of the Ecclesiastical History containing the acts and monuments, or things passed in every king's time in this realm. Quote, too much amplifying things yet be but small, making mountains of molehills, end quote. So, pretty clear. This early usage shows the phrase already carrying its familiar meaning of exaggeration, and from here it would continue to appear in literature and commentary and gaining traction as a common metaphor. So we're going to move ahead, and we see the phrase used in John Gadbury's 1677 work, The Just and Pious Scorpionist, or The Nativity of...
Scorpionist? Does that word mean something different than what I think it means?
Yes. Or the nativity of that thrice excellent man, Sir Matthew Hales, late Lord Chief Justice of England, under the celestial scorpion, astrologically considered.
Oh, so it's the scorpion as in, okay, astrology. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I ended up deciding to go ahead and put some more of the title in this one because it didn't help us.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. All right, fair enough.
Here's an excerpt. Quote, he can find anything to be small or great at his pleasure. He can make a mountain of a molehill and a molehill of a mountain again, end quote. This time we're seeing it in that figurative meaning, and it's used going both directions. Something small made to seem more important, as well as something significant made to seem unimportant, which, that person has an impressive skill if they can do that.
My niece is a very witty person, and she is also prone to the dramatic on occasion, read often. And so she has said in the past, and it just totally sums up her style, that she's never met a hill that she won't at least dramatically faint on. Uh-huh. And I think that that's a very I think that is very much what I just heard from here. You can make a mountain out of a molehill and then a molehill out of a mountain again. You know,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
it's like there's just a gift for really taking something and really just going all out with it and stretching it or bringing it back down or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
my niece has that gift with words as well.
It's awesome. Yeah, so this is the late 1600s. The phrase was flexible enough at that time to describe not just exaggeration, but also minimization. And I want to read the next line from this because it has another term that you may find familiar. Quote, he can magnify and diminish without the assistance of the optics, end quote.
Oh, so yeah, optics aren't everything.
Exactly.
Yeah, nice. Okay, wow.
I was like, wow.
Interesting.
We've been saying that for a long time, apparently.
Yeah.
The phrase was used by Jonathan Swift in 1710 in a piece for The Examiner. This was republished in the 1768 collective work, The Works of Dr. Jonathan Swift, with the author's life and character, notes historical, critical, and explanatory. This is taken from that 1768 collection. In the passage, the it that is going to be described is a political lie or lying as an art. Swift describes lies almost like living creatures, how they're born, grow, sometimes die, and what they can accomplish. He's mocking how lies in politics have power over people, saying, quote, no wonder if an infant so miraculously in its birth should be destined for great adventures, and accordingly we see it hath been the guardian spirit of a prevailing party for almost 20 years. It can conquer kingdoms without fighting, and sometimes with the loss of a battle. It gives and resumes employments, can sink a mountain to a molehill, and raise a molehill to a mountain, end quote. So this is a powerful application of the phrase, I think.
Yeah.
He lists mountains and molehills alongside other examples, not as a means of like explaining the phrase, but as separate items in the list. Issues intentionally taken out of scale by the use of lies. So perhaps things really never change that much.
Yep. Your lips to God's ears.
The next item comes from Volume 7 of an 11-volume collection of the works of Jeremy Bentham, edited by the philosophic radical and political reformer John Bowring. Volume 7 contains Rationale of Judicial Evidence. It was written between 1838 and 1843. Quote, illustration merely, amusement and nothing more, or, if anything beyond amusement, this, that the pretentious worthlessness and depravity of the technical system and of that sort of trash which among lawyers goes by the name of science may be placed in yet another point of view, that of the mountain of their nonsense, the relative as well as absolute magnitude may be measured by the molehill dimensions of such part of their productions as, without abuse of language, may be capable of passing under the name of sense. End quote.
Wow, that's really good because he's not using the phrase, but he's using he's riffing on the phrase.
Right.
That's a really good use of that. And it just goes to show you that the terminology would have been well understood by whoever this is being written for,
Exactly.
or whoever he's talking to. Yeah, wow,
Yeah.
that's really cool.
And a scathing remark in paragraph form. So Bentham, he's using that comparison of mountains to molehills figuratively, obviously, to contrast the bulk of lawyers' writings with the tiny portion of them that contain actual reason. So yeah, and I love the visual here. A mountain of nonsense beside a molehill of sense is fun.
Yeah, that's very good.
The phrase appeared in part of the serial story Silver Slippers, which was published in Good Housekeeping, July 1927. Here's an excerpt. Quote, he had an impulse of deep tenderness toward her, yet his jealousy was aflame. He had not felt this way about the men in the hotel. He had known instinctively that they would never be his rivals. But this was different. Her defense of her friendship with this slender boy, picturesque in his white and with his ruffled hair, Hallam always saw him as he had in the dazzling brightness of the lighthouse tower, or as he had steered his boat against the blue. I am not making a mountain of a molehill. End quote. So here the phrase is used almost in self-defense, a way to pull back from the heat of emotion. This is what he's like, all of that is what he's experiencing in his mind. And he essentially was like angry with her and feeling jealous. And then he's saying to her, I'm not making a mountain out of a molehill, even though most of it's in his head. I have one more item for us to consider before moving to our modern examples. The phrase was used in a helicopter ad by Hiller Aircraft Corporation, and this was found in the August 1960 edition of Civil Engineering, the magazine for engineered construction. Quote, hard work, relocating a power line over Wyoming's Rattlesnake Mountain. How much easier, though, with a Hiller's 305 horsepower to spot 40-foot poles, carry massive reels of cable, string lines in no time, and generally make a molehill out of a mountain, end quote. In this case, actual mountains are a factor, but the mountain being made into a molehill is the work that needs done. So this uses another example showing the phrase is fairly interchangeable. Mountains can be turned into molehills, and molehills can be turned into mountains.
I find that really fascinating because I don't think that in just normal day-to-day conversation that I've heard this phrase used about molehills into mountains, but like your examples have several of them that are used that way to showcase its interchangeability. So I wonder if that's something that just has kind of fallen out of favor. There's not as much interchangeability, or perhaps it's just not something that was commonly used in like my family growing up or in the regions that I've lived. So it may just be like where I'm from, we don't use it that way, but I'm
Right.
curious. But that's really interesting to hear it be used interchangeably like that.
Yeah, there's also something to be said for it being in literature, where when people are writing, they're oftentimes trying to give a little bit of a spin on something and use things creatively, and so that can have an impact on that usage as well. So,
Yeah.
All right, we have several modern uses to cover, and we will get to those right after we say thank you to our sponsors.
This episode is sponsored by our amazing patrons on Patreon. And the cool thing about Patreon is it is 100% free to join the Bunny Trails community. We have new things every weekday on the feeds. On Mondays, we have a conversation about what movies, shows, books, podcasts, and whatever else everyone is enjoying. Tuesdays see early access to the week's podcast. Wednesdays have all the links, books, songs, and other content mentioned in the week's episode. Thursday has patrons-only polls. And Fridays are our lightly edited, behind-the-scenes video featuring all the cut content, goofs, and bonus facts you could imagine.
We've got some other pretty cool stuff too, like original digital artwork once a month made by me, and direct access to talk with us. No algorithms getting in the way of what we see or don't see. Plus, you can get awesome name recognition like Pat Rowe does every episode. And our top spot is currently occupied by the amazing Mary Halsig Lopez. You can join the Bunny Trails community for free at Bunny Trails Pod on Patreon.
That's patreon.com/bunnytrailspod.
All right, Dan wants me to start in 1993 with an episode of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. This is in season 4, episode 11, which was titled Take My Cousin, Please. Will tries to get his cousin Hillary to go on a date with Will's teacher in order to get better grades in his class. Sounds so much like that show. His teacher has a mole, which the famously shallow Hillary can't quite look past, and that sets up this awful line from Will. Quote, "What is the matter with you? You're making a mountain out of a mole, Hill." End quote.
I've heard from a couple of sources that, including his book, and which I haven't read, but I've heard people talk about his book, but I've seen a couple of articles too, that Will Smith was struggling with finding his humor again during season 4, which was when this aired, due to his preparations for the movie 6 Degrees of Separation, in which he played a con artist that is right at home in high class society. Donald Sutherland was also in that movie. So he said he felt like he had lost touch with, Will Smith said he felt like he lost touch with his Philadelphia roots and the character of the Fresh Prince. And he did a bunch of things to help him find a place again. Like he brought in a bunch of friends from Philadelphia to help write on the cast, to just like help him find his spot. But he said on numerous occasions that he credits this line, which he ad-libbed, and the response from his castmates and the live audience as the defining moment that he knew he had found the character of Fresh Prince again and was back to his old self.
Okay.
And I hear this line literally anytime time someone says you're making a mountain out of a molehill, I literally hear Will Smith say that to his cousin Hillary, played by Karen Parsons. I hear him say that every single time in my
Yeah.
head when someone says it.
Okay.
I'm like, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. It's
So
hilarious. And it's
terrible.
amazing how, like, this was 1993, and I still, in 2025, this is still exactly how I hear this phrase, is that one line from Will Smith in that TV show. It's
That's so
amazing.
wild.
Yeah.
I love it.
It was when I saw that you were doing this show, it's literally the first thing that came into my mind.
That's amazing. I didn't even remember it.
You're a little bit younger than I am.
That's true. On Psychology Today Online, we find the article How to Make a Mountain Out of a Molehill, the Key to Understanding the Source of Our Emotional Troubles by Jennifer Kunst, PhD, published December 13th, 2013. Dr. Kunst describes how some turn their experiences from molehills into mountains.
Okay.
Quote, so the other day I was working with a patient and we were trying to understand why she had overreacted to something. To protect her confidentiality, I won't tell you the exact issue, but you can probably guess the general scenario. Someone takes your parking spot or cuts you off in the freeway. Someone criticizes you or doesn't follow through on a commitment they made to you. Attendance at your event or views on your blog or tips at your table are down that day. These experiences would bother any of us, but some of us, on some days, in some states of mind, will be more than bothered. We will be terribly hurt, angry, upset, or even enraged. In such states of mind, a minor injury is felt to be a mortal wound. A difference of opinion is felt to be World War III. End quote. And yeah, I've definitely seen that happen to people.
Oh yeah. Cue my niece's joking but somewhat serious turn of the dramatic hill that she won't at least dramatically faint on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my friends is a server, and he said recently that he was trying to take an order, and it was for a drink, and they didn't have that drink, and so then the customer said, "Okay, well, I guess I'll need a minute." And he was like, okay, whatever.
He's just like really grumpy about it. Where the
having to
person's
have
like, oh, you
somebody
don't have the
else
thing I want. So, all right, well, give me a minute and I'll figure out something else. It's like, that shouldn't be a big deal, but
Right.
just was the
It was
day.
just like, okay, so you don't want to drink then? I don't know. He was just like
Oh, that's hilarious.
offended. Oh, it was just so funny. It's like,
we've all been there where something that really isn't a big deal suddenly turns into a big deal just because, and it has
Right.
nothing to do with that. That was the catalyst,
yeah,
right?
it's like there's just all these other things or whatever it was going on that's so funny.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. This is why when someone like blows up, I try not to like respond in kind.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
I intellectually I know that it's not me that they're blowing up at, right? It's the situation, like it's everything else that led up to that. However, it's really hard not to, and it like takes a specific act of thinking about it to me, because like I emotionally want to respond in kind, but
Right, 'cause
it's
that's what
really
you
hard
get-
not to.
Yeah, it's like we're designed that way. To respond, Well, hypnotherapist Jack Elias used the phrase in his article, How to Make a Mountain Out of a Molehill, published May 30th, 2021. It includes the following, quote, basic recipe for creating a mountain out of a molehill. 1. First, be mentally and physically speedy. Don't be still. 2. Make sure you keep stirring things up, thoughts, feelings. 3. Assume the other person should be able to read your mind and understand exactly what you mean. 4. Communicate vaguely. Don't slow down to consider if you're making sense. Once you have all these ingredients, just keep stirring. If you do all of the above, you can expect the molehill to quickly grow. End quote.
That's a very good satire.
Yeah. He goes on to say, quote, of course, I don't recommend that you follow this recipe, but sometimes it's good to introduce a little humor when you're looking at our common patterns. I have certainly created some mountains in my time, end quote. And goes on to share some advice and, some methods for actually de-escalating. Mountains, Molehills is an oil on canvas painting by Inez Andrasik of the United States. Here is her comment on the piece. Quote, This is a humorous painting about how sometimes we make mountains out of molehills and sometimes enjoy sparring with one another. It is both a celebration of the fun of gamesmanship and a reminder to not go over the edge. End quote.
This is what I know of art. When I can't make heads or tails of it, it's abstract. So is this an abstract style?
Yes.
All right,
Very
look at
well
me.
done.
Very good, because I looked at this and I'm like, I have no idea how one is supposed to get that from what I'm looking
Well
at here.
done, you've done it. So I like that this is kind of a almost a lighthearted take on the phrase. She used a colorful blend. It's an abstract style. From my perspective, I can make out two figures who almost seem to have their faces pushed close to one another, and then there are just kind of limbs going all directions. It doesn't look like these things at all, by the way. Uh, but
Yeah, I have no idea how Shauna sees this, but like she's way smarter than I am, so I believe you.
it's the vibes. Yeah, so I see these like two individuals or characters like nose to nose, if you will, as they're in a disagreement. However, there are no defined facial features or even body parts here. This is truly abstract, but I love all the colors and everything, and it's really I do enjoy it. So
I love that you love this, and I love that people like Inez are making things like this for people like you.
perfect. The phrase was used in the title of an article shared on Game Rant. Stardew Valley's 1.7 update hopefully won't make a mountain out of a molehill by Adez Gunner. It was published in September 2025, and here is an excerpt. Quote, while it's great that he's still developing new content for Stardew Valley nearly a decade after its debut, Concerned Ape should make sure to temper expectations for this update if it isn't that large in scope, so that fans won't get disappointed by it when it eventually comes out. End quote. And this was after some harshness towards the 1.6 update, which wasn't as expansive as people
Sure.
felt like it had been claimed to be. And this is a common theme for video game releases and updates. You want to hype it up, but not oversell. I think there are a few games that break this rule and don't promise more than they offer in the end. And we're going to talk more about this in our behind the scenes, which airs every Friday on Patreon. So that's patreon.com/bunnytrailspod.
Looking forward to it.
The song A Mountain Out of a Molehill is from the 2025 album Everything and Nothing by Huey Briss. Here are some of the lyrics. Quote, I never really understood the way this life was designed. Rich keep getting richer and the poor can just die. Say we all get freedom, we can soar to the sky. Make it all look good, it's a horrid disguise. It's only so much energy to give. Want to save the children, they forget about the kids. Moving too fast, never noticing the truth. The old-time wisdom never made it to the youth. It's phones in the home, the YouTube streaming. No books getting read, 'cause nobody got a reason. Time ain't slowing, better get it while you're breathing. All in all, we came out decent. End quote. The song has a good beat, sort of mellow flow, but a deep message. The hook and chorus repeat that you can't keep wasting time. And I actually really like this song.
Nice.
What I like about this phrase is how it reminds me that perspective isn't fixed. It shifts with time, emotion, and circumstance. Something that feels overwhelming in the moment can later seem small, and sometimes the things we dismiss as small are actually worth our full attention. The phrase carries both a warning and a balance check. Don't overinflate the trivial, but also don't minimize what truly matters. We have to be careful not to make mountains out of molehills or molehills out of mountains. Well, that's all we have for today. If you have any thoughts on the show or pop culture references that we should have included, reach out to us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/bunnytrailspod, or comment on our website, bunnytrailspod.com.
It is Patrons Poll Time. Recently, we asked our patrons about their time management techniques. It seems our patrons use a variety of methods, with the top approaches including limiting multitasking, a daily prioritized to-do list, and time blocking. Here's a quick definition of the ones that our patrons mentioned. Time blocking, which is scheduling specific blocks of time for different tasks or activities throughout your day. This would be like blocking out 1 to 5 p.m. to work on writing an episode. Now, task batching is where you group similar tasks together and handle them in a single block so that you don't have to mentally switch from one type of thing to another. This works well when things are similar enough in nature that you're already in the right mindset, or maybe you have to do a certain type of thing. So I think of this like mowing the lawn, and then I prune the bushes, and then I water the herb garden. These are all things I'm going to do outside. It wouldn't make sense for me to mow the lawn and then come inside and do some work and then go back outside and water the herb garden and then come back inside and then go back outside and prune the bushes, because then I'm going back and forth. And for me, task batching, could work easier. So that's the kind of
Mm-hmm.
concept of task batching. The daily prioritized to-do list is simply creating a daily list of tasks ordered by your priority, and that helps you stay on track and avoid distractions. So you can just cross them off. Some people get a good kick out of being able to cross something off too, so that can be helpful.
Heck yeah.
Another one is limiting multitasking. So that's where you want to focus on one task at a time to improve concentration, and you block out other things. So maybe you say, I'm going to work on this task, and while I do that, I'm going to turn off the second monitor, or I'm going to put my phone on do not disturb, or I'm going to, like block my or mute my messages from my email or whatever, right? So it eliminates, maybe this is where you put a note on your door and you're just closing the door and you're like, hey, do not interrupt unless super important kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or the classic on a conference call,
Right.
whether you really are or not. The 2-minute rule is if a task takes less than 2 minutes to do, then you do it immediately. And this really what this does is helps keep you from bogging down your to-do list creation with minor tasks.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got a bunch of things to do, it's like, I got to respond to this email. And it would be like, it's really fast, but now it's a thing you have to think of when you're creating your to-do list. And if you do it immediately, it's something that, oh yeah, I can just do it. It's done. It's over with. And I don't need anything else from it. So this doesn't work for everybody, but for some folks, it really can be helpful. And the last one that I'll mention that our patrons mentioned is setting deadlines. So assigning realistic deadlines to tasks can create a sense of urgency and help maintain that momentum. Personally, I learned in college that if a looming deadline is there, then that is my best motivator. And I always want to be that person who does a project and gets it done early, and then comes back and looks at it a couple of times. And I know that if I did that, I would make a better product. But all of my college career taught me that no, I'm the person that if there's a deadline, I'm going to run up to it and then I'll turn it in, and there it is. So, and this process actually, because I learned that, it works for me even if I set my own deadline that no one else cared about. But those kind of deadlines sometimes don't work for others. So,
Yeah.
all right. So what our patrons say? Well, Emily said, quote, I think I'm a combination of to-do list and 2-minute rule. If while working on something on my to-do list, I see something that to be done quickly, I'll just do the quick thing and then return to my to-do list, end quote.
Nice. Jan shared, quote, I always intend to use various time management techniques to accomplish the things I need to do, but I always get distracted and then end up falling back on the old run around like a chicken with their head cut off, rushing about to get everything done, end quote.
Yeah, I feel like I should have included run around like a chicken with their head cut off.
Yeah, like no plan. You just wilding it out there. I feel that, Jan. Like, I find that trying to use a specific technique gets me wrapped up in the process of planning rather than the doing of the tasks. So yeah, but one of the best time management tricks, I guess, if you will, I've learned is from you, Dan, your 90% rule.
Mm.
Like when a project feels nearly finished, pause and ask 2 questions. Is it good enough? Like, are there real errors or problems that need fixed? And then 2, will the improvement be worth the time it takes to make the changes? And I use this regularly, especially with my artwork. I'm more likely to stop at like the 95% point. And I usually go back for like a final pass and make a few tweaks. But the last 5% of perfection often isn't noticeable to anyone else. As a perfectionist in many ways, this has been a lifesaver for me. I get results that I'm proud of while preserving my sanity and freeing up that last 5% time for other things.
Yeah, I learned the 90% solution in college when I realized that 90% is an A and 99% is an A. So that's kind of where that 90% came from when I talk about that. And while the perfectionist in me wants to get the full completion, when I have limited resources, like I have limited time to work on something, sometimes I have to decide if the extra work is worth it. Is the juice worth the squeeze?
Right.
And it's worked great for me outside of the collegiate setting too, especially for being a recovering perfectionist. So so I like that, and I'm glad that you're able to make use of that as well. For me, on the time management side, I'm primarily a to-do list guy. I prioritize my items the night before or the morning of, and then I work through the list in order. I don't multitask well, so I stick to one project at a time, and I prioritize my list to ensure I can get everything done. It's not always the most important to least important, but it's some combination of most important and how long it will take to ensure I can actually achieve everything on my list, or to ensure the things that I will, get that I'm going to end up moving to tomorrow if I can't get them done are things that don't actually have to be done today, right? So I may have a list and this thing has to be done by Tuesday, but it would be really best if I get started on it today. So that might be a thing that, it's at the bottom of my list so that with whatever time left I have, I start on it. But then the next day it's going to be the top of the list. It's the most important thing or whatever.
Right.
So, and the other thing about to-do list is it gives me sort of a deadline, which helps create that motivation for me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also, I like Emily, I use the 2-minute rule if I'm not already doing something else. So if I'm in the middle of something, I don't worry about it. But if I'm not or in the middle of something, then I'll just go ahead and knock it out if it's less than 2 minutes, which makes it really easy.
I love that idea, and every once in a while it works for me. Yeah, I think it depends how many 2-minute items you get in a day.
Well, it does, and it's also like some people doing 2 minutes over is the same as having to start all over again. It takes you out of your float state or whatever.
Right,
And
absolutely.
so for folks that are easily distractible, sometimes the 2-minute rule isn't helpful at all,
Yeah.
unless you were not doing anything, unless you were like,
Exactly. Then it's just
yeah,
stopping or, whatever. Yeah,
right.
exactly. And for me, those end up being a lot of batch items, like the 2-minute items that I'll just like
Oh,
batch them
batch a
together.
bunch of small items together.
Yeah, yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, as a reminder, our silly polls mean absolutely nothing and are not scientifically valid. And patrons of all levels, including our free tiers, can take part. Head over to patreon.com/bunnytrailspod to take this week's poll. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you again next week. Until then, remember, words belong to their users.